Ineffa's been out for a few weeks now, and she has proven herself to be one of the most valuable characters in the game, especially with the new stuff in 6.0 factored in. So, let's go for her team calcs one more time to see how worthwhile it is or isn't to pull for her and for which teams. Do just keep in mind I calculate at a higher standard than most creators, so my numbers will likely be higher than what you're used to seeing. Also keep in mind that most of these teams were covered in some of my previous videos already, so we'll try to be brief with those to avoid too much repeated information. But since Ineffa is currently on banner, if you're looking to save money going for her, I recommend checking out today's sponsor, Loot Bar. Loot Bar is a very safe and reliable top-up site where you can purchase Genesis crystals at up to a 25% discount compared to the in-game prices. Your data is completely safe during a transaction with Loot Bar, as all you need to provide is your in-game user ID. And with Loot Bar, you'll even receive points you can use to redeem rewards such as Welkin Moon or cash coupons. Loot Bar is widely used by even some of your favorite large creators like Jello Impact, and Loot Bar also has positive reviews from over 30,000 different users. So go ahead and click the link in the description to get started. New users will receive 25% off their first purchase. Thank you, Loot Bar. Now back to the video. Alright, so Electro-charged, aka lunar-charged, is an extremely versatile reaction, and all Ineffa really needs is the reaction to be triggered at least once every 5 seconds in order to provide some of, if not the highest sub-DPS damage in the entire game, while also providing shielding and elemental mastery buffing, so there's no shortage of team that she fits very well in, including some unintuitive ones. For instance, you can use her surprisingly well with Wanderer, in a team of Farazan and Yelan. Unfortunately, you have to trade off buffing by not using Bennett, but for a low constellation Wanderer, the sub-DPS damage of Ineffa is high enough to be worth it over hyper-buffing his own, especially with Farazan able to buff the sub-DPS decently well with 4-piece VV. Wanderer is also able to get both his Hydro and Electro buffs at the same time here. He can use his full extended field time from the Hydro buff in this team without extending the rotation past 19 seconds. But while the Electro buff isn't all that great, being able to burst every rotation without any ER at all is still nice. And what a lot of players will find most important about this team is that it's an actually strong shielded Wanderer team. Another really neat thing is that instead of Yelan and Farazan, you can use Farina and Bennett for a surprisingly good Wanderer team that doesn't need Farazan. For those of you that don't have her C6 yet, you'll just want to ensure you have Wanderer on 4-piece VV here, since there's no other mode to use it. Having to use him on what's supposed to be a support set may sound bad, but having VV on your on-field is actually pretty nice for full res shut-up time. As you can see from the math, he's still a high portion of the team's damage even with this, so he's basically just acting as an Anemo driver that actually has good personal damage unlike the other driver options. Funny enough, this is actually the team I have my fastest clear time on Dire Cactus and Stygian Onslaught with, faster than even my Taser Chlorant, much to my surprise. So with how well this Calc performed, it makes me wonder if future supports could actually be good enough to where we truly just no longer even use Farazan. That said, Ineffa can also work well with Xiao in the same team with Farazan and Yelan, pretty much all the same points as before with Wanderer, excluding the elemental buffs since Xiao doesn't get those. He's not as good at driving as Wanderer, so Yelan does a bit less damage with him. The rotation is longer, so the VV uptime isn't quite as good, but despite this, it still actually counts higher than his FFXX team. Ineffa is actually just that good. Ineffa also gives Xiao access to a good team without Farazan as well. Wanderer uses Bennett to be able to use Farina as the Hydro, but Xiao can just use Zhan Yun instead, meaning you don't have to put him on VV since Zhan Yun can be the one using it. Ultimately, this ended up at about the same DPS as his FFXX team, because Ineffa is actually just so good that her personal damage can compensate even for missing Farazan's buffing. Another unexpected use case for Ineffa I found is with Itto. Currently, it's generally accepted that his best team is with Shalonin, Farina, and either Yelan or Bennett. You simply use Ineffa in that 4th slot instead. She does more damage than Yelan and her damage is worth more than Bennett's buffing, and she also only takes a single second of field time here since there's no need to use her burst, so the rotation time is also lower. Those factors result in a very big and unexpected DPS increase, with Itto actually having respectable team DPS now. This can't really even be called a wheelchair because Itto is doing the same damage as Ineffa here, even with my Calc having Ineffa on her weapon and Itto on an aura on Serpent Spine. Ineffa also has great AoE to go with Itto's own AoE, so this is a legitimate AoE team. I would highly recommend an Itto main to pull Ineffa if you have the means to get her. Noelle is similar to Itto in a lot of ways, so she can do the same team and it's a good upgrade for her as well, just not nearly as big as it is for Itto. Navia can also do this team, but in her case, the amount of personal damage she loses compared to her current best team is simply way too much for it to be an upgrade, but it's a surprisingly close alternative that you can bring if you ever need Electro-charged for any specific enemies. Unorthodox teams aside, We also have Hyperbloom and Quickbloom DPS, which are looking to benefit a ton from Ineffa, and Tighnari is one such DPS. At first, I was thinking Tighnari prefer a double Dendro team with Llama, but after Llama got nerfed, it's now looking to be better to go double Electro with Cyno and Yoimiya. Tighnari applies a lot of Dendro while he's on field, but he's only on field for a few seconds at a time, so there should be full Thundercloud uptime. Since his Dendro application is way faster than Cyno's Hydro, he should get spread on almost if not everything except his skill, and the Electros can get a few aggravates during this time too. Since Tighnari isn't on field to apply Dendro for too long, you won't get a ton of Hyperblooms, but should still be able to get at least about 6 per rotation, which isn't half bad for a 15-second rotation. So all in all, this is looking to be Tighnari's new strongest team, if the new 6.0 stuff releases as it currently is. Alhaitham, as mentioned before, can also do double Electro with Xiao and Auroron. Xiao is needed because Alhaitham applies too much Dendro for any other Hydro to keep up with. The Auroron will do solid sub-DPS damage while buffing Alhaitham with Scroll, which is something he normally lacks access to. The main issue is that Alhaitham has high energy requirements as solo Dendro. He will likely need an ER sense so his damage will suffer, plus having to use Xiao means he's not being buffed by the Hydro like he normally is. As a result, this is a side grade to his current Furina Nahida Kuki team with an optimized rotation. If you already have that team, then it's not worth getting Ineffa for Alhaitham right now, unless you just want more options. Several Electro DPS such as Cyno, Raiden, and Sethos have gotten large buffs from Ineffa even right now, but for 6.0, they can do teams such as Xiao, Ineffa, Nahida. And then in 6.0, you'll replace Nahida with Llama for another large upgrade, which will be a massive upgrade over their pre-Ineffa teams, with Cyno in particular actually looking to rise very close to Clorand in power level. So for these 3 Electro DPS, you should absolutely pull Ineffa, but for Clorand and Veressa who already have very strong teams, Ineffa doesn't change anything for them. But it is a strong team Clorand can use, like a Hyperbloom team like this with Furina instead of Xiao, since she has self-healing, it just won't be as strong as Overload. Then Neuvillette, before Llama got nerfed, it was looking like Hyperbloom with Furina, Llama, and Ineffa was going to be his strongest team by a good margin, but after the Llama nerf, it is still looking to be his strongest team, but now only slightly stronger than just using pure lunar-charged with Kazuha or Xilonen instead of Llama for more buffing instead of the Hyperbloom damage. And using Ineffa with Neuvillette this way is looking to be quite stronger than his previous team with both Kazuha and Xilonen, so I'd say it's definitely worth getting Ineffa for him, especially if your Neuvillette is C0, since Ineffa will give him a shield. With Llama, the classic double Hydro team structure is also looking very strong. You can play this with Kuki instead of Ineffa if you don't want to pull for the robot, but it is a lot stronger with Ineffa, so you probably want to pull her for this. Hyperbloom aside, Overvape is another team archetype that I mentioned Ineffa will be fantastic for. Right now, it's already looking to be a side grade for Arlecchino to melt using Yelan, Bennett, and Ineffa. In 6.0, the release of Cyno, the new Notcry sets, and Notcry Resonance, these factors are looking to turn Overvape into an actual upgrade by using Cyno instead of Yelan as the Hydro. Now, Cyno's Hydro is only about every 2.1 seconds with an extra application every 5 seconds, which is quite slow, but since Arlecchino can use Lali for forward melt, we should be able to use that same combo for Overvape and result in a decent upgrade over Melt. Arlecchino is certainly already more than strong enough with Melt, so you don't need to pull Ineffa for her by any means, but having the versatility to flex between Melt and Overvape depending on the content would be great to have. For Hu Tao, she can currently do Yelan, Xiao, and Ineffa as a good side grade to her current team, but in 6.0 you'll replace Xiao with Cyno for that EM buffing and extra Lunar damage bonus on Ineffa. Like with Arlecchino, this is certainly not a massive upgrade over the current team to where you need to have FOMO if you can't get Ineffa for your Hu Tao, but it is a good enough upgrade to absolutely be worth getting her, especially considering how much stronger this might get once Cyno is eventually replaced with Columbina. But having a shield with Hu Tao is also just greatly appreciated, especially if your Hu Tao is C0 since there's not going to be much stamina to spare for dodging. Lyney, I have been informed from people who have played this team that with Furina, Bennett, and Ineffa, Lyney can vaporize all of his damage as long as you're good with your timing, so this is fantastic. You get high AoE sub DPS from Ineffa, something he normally lacks, and at the same time you're also getting a very strong shield. And as we know, playing shieldless Lyney is the most common complaint about him, so that's fantastic. Damage-wise, this is only slightly better than current options like Sucrose, but again, you now have AoE damage from Ineffa plus a shield, so chances are it's going to feel like a bigger upgrade in practice than the math suggests. Yoimiya can also do Ineffa Overvape. Unfortunately, I've been informed by people who have tried this that Furina isn't enough Hydro to avoid missing any vapes, so Yelan has to be used instead, and this won't be an upgrade over Melt, but it's a close side grade, so that can be nice if you don't have or want to use valuable characters like Tighnari and Escoffier with Yoimiya, or just want more team flexibility for your Yoimiya to adapt to different scenarios. In 6.0, I know also becomes an option, but you'd have to be used instead of Bennett for a double Hydro car, since so solo Hydro won't be enough. It's not an upgrade over Bennett for this, but it's pretty close, so if you need to use Bennett somewhere else, this is a good way you could free him up. As for Diluc, Ineffa won't fit into his plunge teams, but there are some Diluc mains who don't want to use him with plunge. If that's you, Ineffa just might be for you. It certainly won't be as strong as Melt Plunge by any means, but Overvape with either Farina or Ino as the Hydro, Diluc's personal damage doesn't look great here on the surface, but relative to the short 15 to 16 second rotation time, it's actually pretty respectable, especially considering you can pick him up for free next month. And then there's also Chasca. Ineffa is certainly not going to be an upgrade over a C6 Iansan, but it's surprisingly close, which can be valuable for allowing you to use Iansan with someone else like Knight, Veressa, or Mavrika. The Ineffa's damage is AoE. In Melt, Chasca can have Mavrika do a burst AoE nuke to compensate for Chasca's own lack of AoE, but Overvape didn't have that same luxury before. Using Ineffa instead of Iansan here will help with that. Also, you'll be able to use Ino as the equivalent Hydro option to a C0 Farina if you need to free her up somewhere. So while this isn't an upgrade, there are some very valid reasons to use Ineffa here, though just keep in mind since Chasca's personal damage will be lower, the team won't scale as well with her constellations. Next, let's go over the Taser Drivers such as Aoife, Mizuki, and Sucrose. Pretty simple and straightforward. Ineffa is by far the best Electro sub DPS for Taser teams, so she's a massive upgrade here, and you'd be quite a fool to not pull for her if you play this type of team. Out of these drivers, Aoife is generally going to be the best one, using a team of Farina, Ineffa, and Auroron. However, once we get to 6.0, you can use Ino instead of Farina, and you'll get identical results. And since Sucrose doesn't heal, if using her as the driver, you'd want using Ino instead of Farina. If using Mizuki, she's essentially just an inferior Aoife, but actually has one advantage over him, which is that Aoife is basically forced to use Auroron on his team. Mizuki doesn't have that same requirement. Her swirl buff applies to the whole team, so what I found best for her is to go double Anemo with someone like Venti doing decent swirl damage alongside her. This should be really fun and legit decently strong team for any groupable AoE content, and it's the only way to use her without her just being a worse Aoife. Another thing you can do with Taser is on-field Kokomi, since she heals you and can do double Hydro with Farina, freeing you up to use someone like Kazuha or Sucrose for buffing. Once we get Llama, you could also use her instead of Kazuha for a Hyperbloom team, which should be around the same power level. Both of these should be a big upgrade over any prior existing Kokomi teams, but if you can't get Ineffa for Kokomi, she'll also be getting a strong new team option with Nilo Bloom thanks to the addition of Llama in 6.0. But I'd still recommend the Kokomi main try to get Ineffa if you can, for that extra team flexibility. There's also Keqing. I've asked around, and what seems to be the most optimal for her is using Farina and Jean, doing a 27 second or so rotation with 2 Keqing DPS windows. Your second Keqing DPS window won't be buffed by Farina, but the long rotation reduces everyone's energy needs by enough to be worth doing. And as you'd expect, this is way stronger than her Aggravate teams, so if you want to upscale your Keqing, definitely get your hands on Ineffa. Lastly, Flins. It's no secret that Flins really wants Ineffa for his strongest teams. To give an easy visual, here are the numbers for all Flins teams I calculated. There's about a 27% difference between having and not having Ineffa for him. The DPS is still quite high without her, but if you want to maximize your Flins, absolutely pull Ineffa. And that's about every team I've taken the time to calculate Ineffa in that she's worth using. Looking into optimal teams for so many different units took an immense amount of time, which is why this video is so late into her banner. If you appreciate the effort, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel for more quality theory crafting. But to recap, here's a tier list ranking how good she is for different units. As you can see, there are over 20 DPS that I would say Ineffa has great pull value for, and many of them, the DPS jump is so big that she's basically a must pull for them. So, I'm curious to know your thoughts. Did you pull Ineffa, or will you be pulling her? Who will you be using her with? If so, let me know in the comments down below. Also, feel free to join my Discord where you can communicate with me and my community directly. Thanks, and goodbye.